Hi guys, welcome to the Photographer Academy and welcome to the dogs barking next door. So in case you can hear a few dogs killing each other, it's nothing to do with us, all right? Welcome. So today's session we're looking at question time from our members. In fact, we are live on our YouTube channel, so please feel free if you are joining us live then to get your questions through, and I promise we'll try and cover those as well and things. We've got a whole load of questions in different kind of headings here to work our way through. Over the past six months, we've kind of chosen members at random and kind of sent a survey off for them and kind of question and answers and so on. And we've kind of chosen some of the most common questions amongst them all to actually come up with question time today. But as I said, because we're live here on YouTube with it, then please feel free to actually ask away as we're going through. If you're unfamiliar with the Photographer Academy, we're an online training company for photographers based on a streaming resource. There's 3,000 films online today, and there's basically usually 3 films minimum actually released each week. This week, for instance, I think they've just released 6. But it'll give you a kind of a guide on what we're doing, and obviously compared to YouTube, being a member of Photographer Academy allows you to be completely ad-free, of course. Right, let's go to screen and let's get our first questions from one of our members. So the first section we're going to be looking at is photography development. How do I take photographs more like a pro? Okay, so I think we cover this quite a lot when we're in live shooting. Next week we're here with a male model, so you should be able to actually see some of these things applied. The first thing I would do is try and choose a prime lens rather than a zoom lens. That's the first thing, but probably the majority of it is working in a manual mode instead of an automated mode. There's nothing wrong with an automated mode when you get it right, but really what we want to do is consistency of the exposure from beginning to end. Because we're usually in a controlled environment, whether we're using sunlight or shaded light outside, or we're using flash inside or outside, it's usually some kind of common denominator. So the first things first, shoot with a prime, shoot with an aperture that is for creativity and not just an average. Make sure you're shooting in a manual mode if possible, and try and look at the angles for high and below. So in other words, instead of keeping at the normal 5'2" that the average photographer in the world is taking at today. So that's the first thing I would do, is actually look at what's online. You can easily find billions of images to influence you, and then just try and actually mimic those to begin with. But the main thing is to kind of shoot in manual mode. Dogs are off next door. What is the best way to compose my shots? I would say that if you're possibly allowing yourself to view, can't believe the dog, sorry Brandon. It was my idea to move across to this side of the studio and hence they're off at it. Anyway, compose the shots. The first thing I would do, if possible, try and keep to the old school of looking through the camera lens. If you're looking through on the camera back, try and keep it as close as you can to yourself to keep some stability, and basically use the actual kind of the thirds lines to kind of really change your composition element. I mean, that's kind of key anyway. So whether you're photographing in square, whether you're photographing in panoramic, or whatever you would do, but the start of the composition has to start in your head and what's in front of you. But the main thing is to not just fill the frame all the time, but look at some kind of negative space to add impact in towards the image, even if it means that you're going to run a skinny panoramic, so cropping off either the bottom and the top, or just the bottom, whatever it is, if you're on a landscape, to really kind of make sure it's there. But I would try and look through the viewfinder. If you're not looking through the viewfinder, look at the back of the camera and try and actually have the grid system up there, and try and place them on that kind of either right-hand vertical line or the left-hand vertical line will help you. How do you keep motivated with your work? I know that can be really difficult, especially if you're a pro photographer, in fact, shooting lots during the course of a day. For me, training my photographers who work for me over the years to be prepared to actually bring a shot of the week into every one of our shoots at the end of the shoot or during the first part, was something that kind of kept them on their toes and kept me on my toes as well. I would say that it's easier to keep motivated in photography when you're working alongside others in the business, or you're in touch with other photographers, whether in social media or whatever. But let's face it, you're bombarded by imagery every second of the day if you're online. And I would just actually encourage you to kind of take some screenshots and then kind of look at how you can start to implement those within your business. So I think it's how do you come up with your creative ideas for your shoots? I think that kind of tallies into the last question really about keeping motivated. It's kind of always in search for kind of inspiration and kind of then applying it as soon as you can within your everyday photography. I suppose in some ways within the Photographer Academy, I'm lucky because we have to prepare special content for you guys. And by doing that, of course, what we're doing is thinking ahead about what I enjoy to shoot, but also what are the requested things that we get through our membership. And through the questions from a membership, we basically get to actually apply it into an everyday scenario to come up with that kind of variety. So I would say that if you're really struggling to come up with creative ideas, just look at the Sistine Chapel. Yeah, look at something that inspires you. Go for a walk in the woods, go for a swim in the cold sea, whatever it would do, find some other way to kind of null out and then kind of gather in. So I kind of call my head an image bank now. So I'm collecting images, and every so many times I need to actually forget stuff so I can bring other stuff in. And that could be the same as scrapbooking, screenshots, kind of printing stuff out, putting images into the likes of a PowerPoint, whatever it would be, but find some way to collate those images for you to be able to actually draw on your knowledge or what you've seen in the past and actually take inspiration from there. Do you ever look for inspiration before your sessions? Absolutely, yeah. I think these three questions, in fact, are very, very similar. And so I would say that before every session, I'm preparing to know what that client is or model is, what the topic of the day is, topic of the session is, and to basically ensure that I'm bringing something that is a little bit different if possible, or just trying something that I haven't done in a while. Last week we were doing projection, and even though it was one of the very first films that we filmed for the Photo Training for You site in the good old days, 13 and a half years ago when we launched, but basically it gave us some kind of my most creative, the fun things that I enjoy to do was obviously the things that we did first. So yes, do you ever look for inspiration before a session? Every single time. I'm currently working on my photography, but I'm struggling to find a variety. Can you help? Flow. I would say that's one of the good things about the Photographer Academy and the sessions that I do in Flow, and some of our masters during the past years have done for us as well. They've basically shown you real world shoots in real world time, and you can see what real pros in the real world are actually photographing, like myself as well with it. But as far as the variety is concerned, it does take a bit of preparation. And the more you're doing the same thing, the more natural variety that you will bring into your shoots anyway. But as far as the kind of, this is another part of the question before, to be honest. How many styles of image do you set out to achieve in a day's shoot? Or day's shoot or each shoot? I would say that if I'm photographing for clients and they're usually around about an hour long in family or teen or whatever it would be, basically I'm looking at no more than 3 different styles. Different shots would be 48 as a rule of thumb. You see pretty much predominantly on YouTube anyway, a lot of my boudoir photography, and you can start to see the similarity in the style, and you can almost predict what I'm going to be doing soon by the use of the light, the use of the camera position, and use of the client pose. So as far as the styles of the image during the shoot is concerned, I would say that 3 is a magic number for me. And in the same way in the post-production, if I'm going to have variety, then it would be a magic number of 3 again, no more than 3. Okay, so then we go into the technique and the technical questions. How do you pose your models so well? Remote control posing. My best friend Bryn said, he first said about my bride and groom photography, he said, I just can't understand how you can do it from 30 feet away and you can get them into the exact position without revisiting them and fussing them and fluffing them and everything else. And a lot of it is just being able to tilt them with your hand or with your camera, get them to actually look specifically in a direction. I'm not a photographer that's ever been a toucher of clients. So I'm not going up and kind of moving a head, moving a hand, moving an arm. And in today's society, I think the ability to kind of pose from a distance, whether it's 10 feet or 30 feet, is essential. I mean, one of the most difficult things I did was photographing in between two different buildings in a long time ago when we used to shoot in transparency and large format. And we were photographing for a sound company, and I had a sound editor in the window. I was shooting from one building to another specifically because I could show the blackness of the building outside and have windows. And I basically had, in each of the windows, I had a different eye on a television, and it was a campaign that he'd recently won some awards with, and we were using that the concept to feature him. He was pretty much known at that point within the industry for this ad. I had no idea, of course, I was just told by the art direction, but it was me kind of taking the direction from there. And then I'm basically either having to shout through the one window out through the other, or I soon found that we rang our mobile phones to his, which at that time was probably costing us about £1 a minute to, that's how long ago it is, yeah, about £1 a minute and things really. So posing models, I would say remote control in very specific direction, left, right, up, down, lean, you know, kind of so on with it and things really. Just, I mean, keep it as simple as you can. I'm just starting out on my photography the journey. What lighting should I invest into? Speed light or strobe? Okay, big question really. I would say that if you're going into the world of commercial photography, that could even be a family photographer in a indoors environment, I would definitely encourage you to invest into studio strobe, studio flash. Why? It's got a modeling bulb, and basically it's going to allow you to see and brighten and lighten a very dark room at times. I know it's going to be a little bit frustrating when you want to do a little bit of work on location, a little bit of work in studio, when you've invested into portable flash and things really, but that's just the kind of the negative. But buy for what the majority of your work is going to be. Just don't buy on budget as well. Buy thinking ahead what you're going to kind of need, and make that investment at the beginning of the career. Things like soft boxes and everything else, invest in them once and you'll pretty much actually not regret it. As far as studio flash is concerned, think about the durability, how fast it recharges, and as well as kind of what the capacity is as far as how big a bang of a flash it's going to be. So I would encourage you to invest into studio flash first. Pretty much you've already probably got a strobe, a speed light anyway, which can actually be kicking around. And if you are going to have to invest into speed light as well as studio flash, then choose one to spend most of the money on, and then choose a third-party product like a Yongnuo speed light instead of a Canon speed light with it and things really. Remember, we're live, so please get the questions in. These are members' questions if you're just kind of jumping in with us now, but please get your questions live. Brandon will ask them straight away. I do not have any flash photography. How can I capture professional looking images? I do not have any flash photography. How can I capture professional looking images? Not quite sure what that question means, to be fair. It might mean I don't have any flash at present. How do I capture professional looking images? If that's what that is, what I would say is specularity of light. Don't bury the client too dark in the wood. So in other words, use the first tree of the wood or the first element of shade. So if the sunlight is coming down, basically just step the client into the tree or into the shade of a canopy of whatever that would be. So they're basically shielded just a little bit from that light, but then use the likes of reflector to direct light in. So I would use a reflector, whether it's a piece of card or reflective surface like a reflector, to add that specular highlight within the image again. But you'll probably find that you're going to be able to actually work with just a reflected light. What are your camera settings? Whoa, big question for what kind of job? So in other words, if I was photographing a wedding, I would pretty much always be in, well, I'm always in manual mode anyway, okay? But if I was photographing a wedding, it's more about what the speed light is set into and when it's switched on and off. So when I'm photographing against the light, so in other words, the sunlight is coming from behind a group, I need to put flash on. Otherwise, the muddiness of the front light is going to make the image look degraded. So I need to put or help the contrast ratio from very bright behind them to very dark in front of them, to avoid the kind of almost bleaching out. In the same way they've got a video light on me today against the white light here. Without that light, basically I'm going to be muddy, and it's all about the specularity. So as far as if I was photographing dance, I'm going to maximize the shutter speed. If I was working with dance on location without flash, I would use as fast a shutter speed as I could, and I'm usually going to choose something like an f4 kind of aperture for a single subject the majority of the time. Anything that where there's a group, I'm usually working on f8. So there's my kind of working apertures. The majority of my work is f4, group shots are f8, commercial photography will probably actually be deeper in depth of field like f16, 22, especially with food, and we're photographing with a macro lens. We need that greater depth of field because of the macro lens itself. As far as speed light is concerned, obviously, like I was saying on weddings, I would have shot with kind of second curtain sync flash when I'm working inside in church or reception, or at nighttime with fireworks and so on. I'll work on high-speed sync when I'm working outside and things really. So as far as the setting is concerned, those would be the first thing. I'll usually work in TTL mode though, as far as the speed light is concerned, when I'm working outside or inside, because I remember I'm working in manual exposure, so I'm choosing my shutter speed and so on. So I'm working inside. The first thing I would do is probably pop my ISO up to 400 ISO. I'm probably going to bring in some of the ambient light in the room light, so I'm going to work anything from a 15th of a second to a 30th of a second or much slower. As far as the aperture is concerned, I probably want to not work lower than f4. So that kind of gives you some idea, but it depends on the job really. I'm glad that you use ETTL, we just touched on that now within your speed light photography shoots. Is it effective as it seems? So ETTL, evaluative through the lens metering, is basically a Canon kind of ETTL, whereas any other flash is TTL as a through the lens. Is it effective as it seems? It can be, but usually, unless my speed light is dominating the exposure, i.e. I'm overriding all the ambient light within the indoor setup, the ETTL mode is being used more as a kind of a fill instead of the main light source. If I'm in a darkened environment, even on exhibition stage, I would still probably opt for a manual exposure of the flash, even though it takes me a couple of minutes to set up. I'll have the consistency of the exposure from the beginning to the end. Whereas in TTL mode, it's good for the likes of working fast, but you're usually going to have to do some kind of quick fixes in the post-production. I wonder about the ISO game. Is that a preference to change ISO rather than adjusting light power? Yeah, so if we're running late, I do apologise. If you guys are running late, you've just joined us. Mark Cleghorn from the Photographer Academy, and this is questions that we've actually had in from members. We're an online training company for photographers, but remember, we are live on YouTube, so if you've got your own questions, we are going to be doing those guaranteed today. I'll just go through until Brandon actually chips in with a question that's live and things. Anyway, I wonder about the ISO game. Is that a preference to change ISO rather than adjusting light power? So when I say the ISO game, this is really good for headshot photography or family photography when you're working fast and you need a variety of different looks and you haven't got the chance to actually change over flash power. I work with, the majority of the time it's going to be strobe, studio strobe, which is going to be an Elinchron flash, yeah. And from the trigger, I can control the power up and down. So when I want to work with, say, a group of subjects, and I want f8, like I just touched on, but then all of a sudden I'm going to shoot an individual, or I want to shoot a creative image of an individual within the group, yeah. I'll need to kind of change straight away to the likes of f4, 2.8, and so on. And I kind of quickly found myself in real-time studio environments, even going back to the film days, where I was swapping between a 400 ISO film and a 100 ISO film, so I could shoot midpoint at any stage to actually change the creative. That's really what I'm doing. So when I need an average aperture, I'll definitely, if I'm in a real shoot and most of the image is going to be shot in f4, I will just shoot the ISO game. In other words, move from 100 ISO to 400 ISO, change my aperture from f4 to f8 to do all the family or the group images. And then as soon as I've actually finished that, I'll change back to 100 ISO and go back to the f4. Hope that answers anyway. Brandon's waving at me, so it's not time out yet. He's got a question. Go.
Somebody has entered a question. So, joined the Academy and it's awesome, thanks. My wife and I started a boudoir photography business. We both shoot light and bright and moody in our portfolios. When you're shooting with clients, do you try to get both of those in the same shoot?
Sure. Sorry, so I'm laughing at the dogs barking in the background, which is our next door neighbours. And I've got to say to begin with, it was my idea to move closer to this window, but I must say the dogs weren't out then. So sorry, Brandon, sorry to everybody watching. So question was, I'm not sure if Brandon's on mic or not, but basically, you're a husband and wife team, you shoot boudoir, you remember the Photographer Academy, so thanks very much for that. Yeah, cheers. And as far as the light and bright and dark and moody images, do I shoot both? You were saying that you do. Yes, I would. Most of the shoot is I want a kind of a 50 shades element towards the end of the shoot, and I want that lovely Marilyn Monroe light and bright element at the beginning of the shoot. I can kind of ease the client in. There are exceptions to the rules where we have clients who are going straight for our confidential style of boudoir photography compared to our kind of more relaxed, informal white sheet sessions and things really. So again, it really depends, but I try and mix both. Okie doke. Any more there?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. He's got some more, but he'll bring those up later. Okay, next one. I'm trying to get into photography. Do I need a light meter and what does it do? All right, so if you don't know what it does, you don't need it. If you do know what it is, obviously you said what it is, basically it's a way to take the working exposure of either the ambient light or the flash falling onto a subject. I personally feel that a light meter with flash makes the job a lot easier, especially when you're starting your career off, in fact, when technical can be a little bit of a headache. The dogs are off again in the background. So basically, I would say that if possible, if you've got the budget, spend a couple of £100 on the basic light meter anyway, especially when you're using flash. I know that some TTL will make it nice and easy and kind of so on with it, but realistically what you want is consistency of the exposure. So what does it do? It measures the light based on 18% grey of the light falling on the subject or wherever you point your meter. That is what it's going to record on. So if it's set in ambient light mode, so in other words it's monitoring for the natural light in the environment, or the sunlight, if it's set into flash mode, it's measuring for and waiting for flash to fire in some way. Is it worth it? I believe it is. And basically, I don't think there's a day that goes by in studio when I haven't used a light meter 10, 20, 30 times, whatever. when you shoot in your church studio, why do you choose to shoot flash over daylight with all the natural light in the studio? Good question. The first thing would be consistency of light 24/7. So in other words, because sun moves and I live in South Wales, which means it rains a lot, okay? I'm not on about New South Wales in Australia. I gather it doesn't rain a lot out there, but in South Wales, UK, it rains a lot. So basically it's going to be dark and so on. And I really don't want to have to just go to 1600 ISO at 1.6 aperture just to get a shutter speed that I can use and things really, okay? So the really, why I use Studio Flash so much, it's consistency of light. There is also another reason that you might be able to see behind me, there's basically all colored light in. Can you go back to the other screen? So you can see that there is colored glass within the glass, so there is no white light that comes through these church windows. We're lucky enough that we do have a few panes of white light that have been replaced, yeah, but it originally wasn't in the design, and we use a mirror to actually reflect that lighting back. But the majority of the reason is because of the consistency in exposure, any time of day. Okay, Photoshop and post-production. Any questions there before we go on?
Quick question. Are you going to be running any photography workshops at your studio in the near future?
Okay, so the question was, am I going to be running any photography workshops in the studio in the future? In the future, I'd like to say yes. At present, no. I've pretty much wiped out the whole of 2021 for any workshops here because of the COVID kind of pandemic that's going around, and for, you know, just doing my bit to limit kind of people moving all around the place to come and view and shoot with me here. Safety of my staff, the safety of my models, and the safety of you actually visiting. So I do apologise. I'm not planning to be at any photographic big events in 2021 in any way at all with it and things really. So if you've heard rumours that I'm a lecturer or whatever it is, or a demonstrator at any big event, I am not there. I'm only doing really small things around the UK, and those things we're putting on ourselves. So nothing planned here at the studios, I'm sorry. Anything else there? Okay, so let's go into the Photoshop and the post-production questions. How long does it take to learn Photoshop? Best question on the planet, all right? I've been using it since 1995/96, I think it is, and I still don't know it all. And even somebody who gets Adobe certified and everything else with it is kind of learning bits, they forget bits and so on with it and things really. Learn the part of the language that you need the most of. That's what I would say, and obviously concentrate on becoming an expert at that. And then once you've done that, start to explore different ways to do the same thing. In the early days when I was training photographers, we're talking in the late 90s, when I was training photographers in Photoshop, I was trying to make them think of Photoshop as a roadmap. And okay, in sat-nav, if you come from Brandon's kind of generation now, you never knew a map existed, but basically, you know, I can go to London in about two and a bit hours from where I am here, but I can also get there in 20 hours. You'll still get to the same destination. There'll just be a slightly different kind of way that you're doing it. So you can go from Cardiff to London via Edinburgh. On the other hand, I can go straight down the M4, then be there a lot quicker. And that's really what you do within Photoshop, is actually learn to get there quicker. And just by pure coincidence, today live on the Academy is a brand new series that I've done about back to basics with Photoshop, and we're kind of going all for the beginning to do with Photoshop and things really. So today we're talking about auto tone, auto contrast, and auto color. It's one of those things that we pretty much ignore at the kind of advanced level or intermediate level, but when you're getting going, it's really worth doing and things really. So you can find those under image, by the way. Go watch the Photographer Academy, it's live there now. So how long does it take to learn Photoshop? It's never. Okay, you're never going to finish it, but basically you could be up and running, I reckon, a good 7 days tuition, familiarity, doing the same things, probably around about 12 months, heavy 1 hour a day kind of tuition will really help you. What I did in the 90s when I was learning Photoshop, the first thing I did was went on a night school course aimed predominantly at the printing industry, because Photoshop was too expensive for the general photographer, and it was really designed to replace kind of scanning and what to do with a scan and so on. But myself and 3 other photographers went. I organised it for a group of mates of mine to actually go to a local college to do it. And because we were the only ones on the course at that time, he had to try and think how photographers were using it. But all of his basically techniques and teaching went out of the window. So what I try and do is teach the dynamic things that you need within Photoshop straight off the bat with it and things really. But I reckon a good few months and you're pretty proficient with the certain tasks that you're doing. Can I get some advice on post-production workflow and how long should it take? Okay, so if we're at an intermediate level, so in other words, you're using Photoshop every day in some way in a familiar tasks, you should an hour shoot, let's say you shoot 200, 300 images, including the edit, the cull, the coloring, the effects and so on in RAW, okay, you should be done the majority of it, including production of album, app, video and so on, you should pretty much be done within an hour. If you're just getting going within the land of Photoshop, as it were, then probably allow yourself around about an hour shoot will be probably taking you about 2 to 2.5 hours, and then just start to actually kind of keep the timer going. I think one of the great things we've got on a smartphone nowadays is like a timer, and just kind of set the timer so it kind of goes off every 2 minutes, or have an egg timer on your desk if that's annoying. But every 2 minutes you want to be finishing an image to start to actually look at how fast that you're going. You can go online, you can buy some kids timers in fact, or even cooking timers that are like 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes and so on. And that's a good way for you to start to actually minimize your time. But usually when you're a busy person, you'll kind of minimize your time quicker than you were if you're only doing a few shoots a week. You'll basically procrastinate so much, it'll just take forever. So how long should it take? An hour for every hour. Hope that helps. But in a day shoot in food photography, I'm pretty much done hour and a half tops. Every image that I photographed, it's more like an hour, because I'll be culling on location, then all I've got to do is fix it, so you can pretty much get it down to an hour. Do you believe that post-processing is a negative factor for photographers? Good question that as well, you know. No, I don't is my first answer, and yes, I do is my second one. That's not me sitting on the fence. I would say for a photographer who's relying on cropping and fixing, post-production is a bad habit. For a photographer who is doing the creative, dodging and burning creative elements, it is an essential tool. So because I spent pretty much all of my life either in a dark room or in a light room, i.e. in a digital environment, I've pretty much spent creative time, but I've also had to spend the essential time film processing, making sure that chemistry is mixed correctly, making sure the film is processed for a certain amount of time in a certain temperature bath and so on. And these are very precise kind of things. And that is also what we're doing photographically. We need to have consistency in exposure so we can minimize errors and we can minimize fixing the non-essential things. So if you're using the likes of Photoshop like a dark room, so in other words, dodging and burning creative, I absolutely feel it is the most powerful thing we've ever been given. If you're using it for fixing the same things because you're a lazy photographer, then I think it's a bad thing. But as far as digital backgrounds that you can buy, digital foregrounds that you can buy and so on, do I like that idea? If they work for you, I'm okay with that. I'd much prefer to go out and try and create my own image, of course. Which blending modes do you use most frequently use with layers? In fact, part 2 of the Back to Basics in Photoshop is next week. And we talk about the basics of layer blend modes. The 2 I use more than anything else are multiply and screen. That's it. I can pretty much answer that question in seconds. Obviously, we use other blend modes for slightly different effects and things really, but the most common things that I use are multiply and screen. I'm shooting a lot of images now. What is your advice on storage and backup? Another good one, I think. The first thing is really only store the raw files you really need. Don't just get into the habit of filling up drive after drive after drive after drive just because of laziness with it and things really. So you've seen me in workflow, and you can see on the Academy lots of films I've made in workflow as well. You'll know pretty much I shoot a JPEG and a raw file at the same time. My JPEG from camera is taken off-site immediately and stored in a folder on my website page. I use a SmugMug website. We don't have any discounts agreed with them at present, I don't think, so it's a shame. But again, SmugMug I've been using for a very long time now, and pretty much all my websites, except for the Photographer Academy, are built on it. So in a special folder on my website, which is invisible to you all, you can't find it at all. Basically, there's a folder there called Mark Cleghorn Vault, and within that Vault folder there would be a year, in other words 2021, and within that 2021 there would be each shoot that starts with the month date. So today would be 07 space 15 space 21, and then it would be the client's name, and then it would be followed by JFC JPEG from camera. The raw files that I decide to actually keep for the job, as it were. So out of, a shoot of a boudoir, let's say I've shot 200, 300 images, you know already by now I'm only going to present about 40 to 48 images to a client. And that means pretty much if there's a few little images there that might be kept, I'm only probably going to keep about 60 of those raw files tops, but it's the 48 images really is what I'm trying to store. Then once the processing of the JPEG file, of the raw file into a JPEG is finished, those would be stored off-site again, now into a client gallery. Whether they ever get to view that gallery or not depends if they're buying a digital service from me and buying extra online, or basically they're not buying digital, then the gallery is never revealed to them. So advice on storage is less is more. I really want to buy an electric car, and there's something that's putting me off at present, is I honestly haven't had the right answer from the companies I've been trying to kind of buy off. Actually, what are they doing with the batteries at the end of the car's life? I haven't had that answer. That makes me kind of want to sign on the dotted line. Fossil fuel and all those kind of things, we all have our own beliefs in it, whatever it is. I need a car, I'm sorry about that. And I need to drive a lot of miles at times, I'm sorry about that, but that's a part of my life. And if I can, I want to replace that with more affordable electricity and more affordable for the environment. But unless I can get a solution to it, I don't want to invest into it. That's what I mean by hard drives. Downstairs we have hard drives and hard drives and hard drives, but of course it's just not one hard drive, it's a backup of the hard drive. And recently Brandon didn't realise we had all this kind of cupboard full of drives from years ago that are backups of backups. We don't need those anymore. We wipe them and we use them again, as long as we've got them with us. I think that was a long-winded way to actually say don't keep as much as you think you do. How much time do you spend in Photoshop per image? Probably in Photoshop, creatively, for a client, no more than a minute or two. If I'm working on an image specifically for me, creative development and whatever it is, it could be anything from 3 minutes to 25 minutes, an hour, hour and a half, it really depends there. But for a client shoot, probably around about a minute. Any questions there before we go on to models and clients?
Yeah.
Go.
Okay. So a couple questions have come in. Slideshows.
Okay, so the first question is Fundy versus Animoto. Animoto, unfortunately, because of the better style of video that it produces, it's just fantastic. I still think it's yet to be beaten. The variety of music that is included in the Animoto with it. I mean, Brandon uses it even, and he's the videographer and video editor, but even he steals my account and goes and makes Animotos to actually add into some of the films or whatever it is. It really is great value for money and things, really. Whereas Fundy is great to be selling with and to be showing images with, and obviously album design and so on. But for me, Animoto, unless Fundy have created something that I'm still not aware of, I'll obviously choose Animoto. Plus it's external and it makes it for sale.
Great.
Okay with that?
Yeah.
Anything else you want to cover? Because we're at 42 minutes here.
Yeah. So three more quick questions.
3 more quick questions coming through.
You're going to have to bear with me with this one because I'm not too sure what it means. But I use various flash devices. I set the power while I make 2 to 5 test shots. How do I reduce or eliminate my trial and error of setting the correct flash power?
Okay, so a long-winded question, really. Brandon's made it even more long-winded, but basically, question is, I've got a variety of flashes. I do about 5+ test shots. How do I minimize that in my setup time? The first thing would be is get to know the flash in a step exposure. So on the back of the Elinchrom lights, there's a number, in the same as a speed light as well. You'll pretty much get to know, depending on the softbox or the accessory you put on the front of it, how it changes the exposure. The first thing would be is obviously don't whack up the power fully and then take the exposure and dial it back, because the flash is going to take a greater time to recharge itself. And if it does that, it means that basically you're into wasting the capacitor and wasting time, because you're having to wait for it to come up and up all the time with it. So as far as manual flash is concerned, learn the kind of the settings and the distance, and you'll probably find that you're getting it within 2 or 3. If you can, try and get the meter to talk to the flash to make it fire. Obviously, one of the things with Elinchrom, they're all linked into a Skyport trigger. I can even attach my speed light to a Skyport receiver that basically looks like a hot shoe. It slides on there and it actually goes onto a camera, or kind of can be just hung or whatever. But basically, I have to still go to that flash to change its settings up and down in power. So there's no really easy way to do it except get to know your kit. Sorry about that. Next question.
One's about the Academy. So is there any professional accreditation system when you sign up to the Academy?
Okay, so is there any professional accreditation when you sign up to the Academy? The instant answer is no. We're basically, in the early days, we were running qualifications and so on with it and things really. We don't actually apply that now because I've moved that into my experience group. I don't have time to actually do it for the fun. Yeah, I kind of put a price point on the Academy that I didn't want to actually charge any more than X. And obviously when you put a price point on things, it does minimize some of the extra things that we might be actually offering and so on with it. So the simple answer is no. Anything else there? Okay, let's get your questions in. Again, I'm just going to finish off with models and clients is the last part of it. Where do you find your models for your photography shoots? So as far as models are concerned, we do have a bit of a catalogue of models we've used in the past, and even some of their friends who are models as well will actually get in touch to us and go in our catalogue. That's just our kind of model book, yeah. But if we're looking for different faces, we will use the likes of the online searches like Purple Port to actually find things. We'll also kind of look at who other photographers have actually photographed that we like and see if we can afford them to bring on the Academy. We are tight on budgets here to actually bring certain models for you. To be honest, I would actually prefer to shoot the girl next door or the guy next door than I would to have to bring in a professional model all the time. That's not because of cost, but that's because I really think you get to see me at work more than actually just the model doing her job. But of course, because of the Academy and its nature, and because obviously it's live environment of what we do need to ensure that we actually have models here, and that a model that is arrived and on time and basically is going to do what we've agreed in advance and things really. So the likes of Purple Port would be a starting point. Best advice on booking a model, be clear from the start. So make them understand what your budget is, make them understand the style of shoots and everything else that you want to achieve. If you are having problems communicating with them about what you're actually trying to do, then send them a Pinterest board or whatever it would be, or send them some images on the phone or whatever it is. But communication is absolutely key, and that works both ways. You can have some models over anxious and they want to contact you all the time, and it's just a pain in the butt. But again, at least they're showing enthusiasm, and that often is the case because of their immaturity as far as their professionalism yet. Once they start to actually work with a lot of photographers, they'll know they're going to have their default case to bring along, plus whatever that photographer wants them to bring. But clarity and communication is key. Am I expected to supply costumes for models I shoot with, or do they usually bring their own selection of clothing? Most models, again, based on what we just said, will bring actually what we've agreed. If they don't have something that I need, then it's up to me to actually supply that if the budgets allow. We found that in the early part of this year, 21, we were kind of photographing very, very similar kinds of lingerie, and basically we needed to add a little bit more variety and styling in there. So we kind of added into our budget a little bit of lingerie that we could use within the actual setups perhaps and things. Some of that lingerie cannot be worn by certain models because of the sheer element that they are. Obviously to do with fit and everything else with it and things as well, but it's majority of the time it's to do with the client, the model or the client is going to be bringing their own. Over the course of the years, we've created a bit of a wardrobe that we've got on hand for something a little bit more kind of creative. How do you differentiate between a model and a client shoot? Great question. There is none. Literally, I want to treat a client with the respect that I have for a model, and I want to give them the same model experience that a model brings. And for a model, I want to treat them in the same way and with the quality of character that I would with a client coming through my door. So I won't treat either one any different to each other. It's slightly different, of course, when on film. I do apologise to the models right at the beginning of the day, and then they get to know it. When I've got to turn my back on them, we start to talk to camera. Often you'll see them in the background board, just actually while I'm doing a little bit of chat to camera and so on. But they are fully aware that we're training, we're doing it. Whereas I can't really do that with a client shoot. So when I'm with a client shoot, obviously I'm concentrating in on the client. There's nothing to do with you at all. There's no talk back to camera or whatever it would be. But because the model is being paid, they're expecting me, and they know that I'm here making training films for you. Whereas a client, I'm shooting their shoot, but they're also allowing us to use it on the likes of the Photographer Academy and the likes of and things. But otherwise, I treat them absolutely both the same and things. Obviously, it's good to have banter, but banter is professional, and I always treat it like a client rather than actually as a model. Any questions there at all? I've got business. I forgot we had business on the end. Sorry, it's my fault. Shall I just quickly do them, yeah? So, okay. Sorry, just having a drink and then I saw the question. How much does it cost to start a photography business? That's not a quick question. Basically, I would say thinking you've got a camera, okay? You've got a camera and you've got some basic flash in some way. I would say if you're a lifestyle business photographer, you're going to be working on location, everything else with it, pretty much the startup cost is almost nothing. A reflector, a camera, obviously you're going to need a bit of a website, and a SmugMug basic one is kind of almost nothing for the year. They're easy to do. You can upgrade at any stage. If you want to sell online, you just choose that option. But as far as how much to start up a photography business, if you're looking to invest into your studio flash, I would say allow yourself anywhere between about $2,000 and $3,000 to buy the right stuff straight away. I would also encourage you to try and spread the cost of any investment. I think your bank manager or an accountant would actually encourage you to do that as well. So instead of kind of buying all up front, spread the cost so you're cash rich all of the time, instead of actually just spending all your money to begin with. So whilst you start to earn money from your jobs, you can then actually start to buy other things for cash. In other words, cash on hand, not obviously physical cash. But basically, I would say an investment, work in a studio environment, to set a studio up, including computer, camera, basically lighting and so on. Probably 10K minimum is what you're going to look to do. I would say that 15K would be a safety net for you, but don't waste it. Just set yourself a budget and keep to it and map it all up like my wonderful Excels that I love and things really. I'm looking for some help within the studio. Have you got any advice on hiring an assistant photographer? Yeah, don't wait too long to hire somebody. People skills is key, and if they fit good, then that's what you need. So what do you need that assistant to do? Are they assistant in administration, or are they assistant in creative? Assistant in creative would mean they're involved with you in the photography in some way. Whereas if they're basically assisting in the administration, they're there a part of the running of the business, or helping you run the business, helping you with the marketing, etc., and client liaison. As far as an assistant photographer is concerned, I think they can be the best things on the planet. You know, an assistant doesn't make you good. A good assistant can make you great. And a great assistant can make you amazing. And you've only got to look at some of the top photographers, whether in the world of commercial or fashion in the world today, and you'll usually find that the top photographers have the most amazing assistants on the planet. In fact, if I have ever had a job role, again, to change for myself in retirement, whatever it would be, and I could get away with basically becoming an assistant. I've got to say my fitness wouldn't allow it, or whatever it would be, but basically become an assistant of some kind, even if it was for free. End life as a kind of a plaything. What is the salary of a photographer? Well, I would say that most of the photographers out there are on minimum salary because they're idiots in business. There's going to be huge extremes, really are. The main thing is you've got to set yourself kind of some tasks. We've just created a 5 questions, was it? Just before we went live today, I can't remember what it was, but 5 things you need to actually set up, and the first thing's a plan, and that plan shows you how much you need to generate to actually earn a decent salary. But I would say if you're earning less money than stacking shelves, you need to change your career, or you need to get real business advice, because you can earn a serious salary as a photographer if you allow yourself to earn that salary. And if you are not very good at sales, employ somebody to actually do your sales for you, because you might have that ability to earn a lot more money without doing a lot more work. It just might be. If you're joining us late, by the way, we've got dogs fighting next door, whoever they are. I do apologise about the noise. Anyway, but yeah, you've got the ability to earn quite a lot of money as a photographer if you allow yourself. How much should I charge for my time? I think that will change drastically, in fact. I would first of all twist it around based on the salary question of the one before. In fact, how much do you want to earn in a year? And then if you can work it backwards, especially when your business is based on time, like as a commercial photographer. How much should you charge for your time if you're working out on average client spend? I would make sure that you kind of say, look, I want to earn 200 or 300 or 400 or 500, whatever it would be as my base amount that I want to earn from each client, and then obviously add the products on top, times them by or whatever, to allow for time spent in creating the albums or whatever it would be. But then you're going to end up with some kind of how much should I charge for my time. Time tends to be a commercial sale. So in other words, I would say many of you are going to work for anything from about £200 a day to £1,000 a day as a kind of a guideline. Those of you who are on £200 a day, do not sell half a day for any less than 200 quid, because basically you're going to be an idiot running around all over the place. As a rule of thumb, I would try and get you to think more like a £50 an hour to £200 an hour eventually, and that will give you some kind of guide of what you're doing. I'm sorry I can't help you more on that, but it's a very, very big question to answer in a very, very short time. How much should I charge my images? I think that's a better one. If I was a commercial photographer, anything from £25 an image plus time to around about £200 to £300 per image plus my time. Depends on your level and so on. As far as for a portrait photographer is concerned, you're earning all your money on that image. So you need to actually work on the calculator. So in other words, a product times X. So if the product is costing you £100, I would probably say that you need to sell it for £500 to make a professional sale. If you're working on a lifestyle sale, you're looking at somewhere about times 2.5 to 3. That's me done with my questions, Brad. I'm sorry went that on a bit longer. Any more live questions coming through?
Just the one. So is the back to the boudoir.
Back to the boudoir question, yeah.
When you're photographing clients, do you ask them permission for your marketing if you can use their images?
Yep.
Obviously some
Got it, yeah. So when I'm photographing real clients, do I get their permission to actually use them in marketing or whatever it is? The simple answer is yes. Boudoir photography, that has come in from. So absolutely yes, because obviously it's delicate in its best day, and it could be erotic in the kind of another day and things ready. So you need to absolutely know what images that you can use and not. If we're looking for images for promotion, for marketing and so on, we're better to actually hire a model in of different ages, different sizes and so on, so we've got that different genre of photography to actually promote, rather than actually relying on clients' images to use as our marketing material. I've got to apologise again for the dogs fighting next door, whoever they are. They're out of my control. If you can hear them on film, I do apologise. As far as clients' images are concerned, I would say in the world of boudoir, except for perhaps an image that they agree to go alongside their review, then obviously that would be good, but try and hide their face really. So they're basically, it can't be used in a negative genre at any stage. And we're done. Guys, thanks for joining me live on the Photographer Academy. Next week we're live in studio again. We've got a new guy with us. In fact, really, we're shooting male portraiture, so we've got a whole host of new film content that we're doing next week. We end off with a bit. I think the 5 o'clock live is where we're looking at physique and lighten it, and we'll be shooting some boudoir kind of films during the course of the day as well. But again, stop by and watch. We're continuing our film series during the coming weeks and months as well, so kind of watch out here live with us. It's always great to actually have some live interaction, and thanks for joining us live on our YouTube channel. But remember, over on the Photographer Academy you can watch it 24/7, ad-free as well with it and things really. So just don't subscribe just below here on YouTube, but also subscribe to the Academy. Helps us survive as well. Take care. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.